What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. So we've talked about the Nintendo Switch firmware update 12.0.0 and how data miners have gone through it and found some pretty interesting things, like the dock now having the ability to upgrade its firmware, but it looks like they came across another feature, this one actually being something that's been requested since the Switch came out, basically, and we're gonna go over that here today. Also, a big PlayStation 5 title has been delayed once again, this really throwing Sony's overall release schedule through a bit of a loop. Oh, and was there a big third-party title accidentally leaked for the Switch through the ratings board, or was it one big misunderstanding? Guys, if you enjoy these videos, make sure that like button helps out a ton, and if you're new to the Small Wave channel, make sure you subscribe down below. And we're gonna start today with Blue Box and Hideo Kojima. We saw that trailer for Abandon that was shared by Sony on their blog, and a lot of people looked at it, saw Jeff Keighley's response saying interesting, and they immediately said, whoa, this is Kojima. This is Kojima throwing up a smokescreen for his next big game. Well, it doesn't look to be the case. We can actually see a response here from Blue Box on their website, where they say, we received several emails regarding the Hideo Kojima rumor. We have no association with Hideo Kojima, nor do we claim to have any association, nor was it our intention to claim such a statement. We are a small group of developers working on a passionate title we wanted to work on for a long time. And imagine that. You're a studio that's really been assisting with a lot of other studios in development. And you're like, we're gonna make our first big game. Here it is. And everyone goes, that's Kojima. Like, imagine having to respond to that on your site. But I guess they don't really have a lot of credits up or anything online. Their website's pretty much blank. So I guess people were just trying to connect dots that weren't there. Or this is exactly what Kojima would say and post if he wanted to throw us off the trail. Although we've kind of been here before, and he does play into this at times. I mean, remember when Death Stranding was coming out and it was being shown as a walking simulator between point A and point B, and everyone said, that can't be what this game is. And then the game comes out and it literally is just us walking from point A to point B. Also, we finally had Destroy All Humans announced for the Nintendo Switch. I say finally because it felt obvious that this would eventually come over from THQ Nordic. When it first came out back in the day, it was on like the PS2 and the Xbox, and eventually it went to the Wii, but it never went to like the GameCube or anything there. So let's head over here to this tweet where they say, on June 29th, 2021, Destroy All Humans will land on Nintendo Switch. They have a full trailer that they shared, and they do have it listed at $40, and they even have some special editions that I think might be exclusive to certain regions, like in Europe. One is $400, by the way. It has like a little crypto statue, which I guess is kind of cool, but $400, that might be a bit out there. I guess if you're a big fan of the series. And then they have one that's like $150. Either way, though, I had a great time playing this game on the Xbox One X, then eventually the Xbox Series X. So I do recommend checking this one out. Maybe you remember it from back in the day, or this is a brand new game to you. It looked pretty good on the Xbox. No clue how it'll look and run on the Switch, but either way, it's a pretty fun game and one I think worth checking out in June. Oh, and we now know, of course, that E3 is coming up this June. It's going to be an all virtual event that will basically sit down and watch a bunch of live streams from these different companies. But Doug Bowser actually put out a tweet about this. We can see it here where he says, it's going to be great to get the video game industry back together with our friends this June. We'll make the virtual format fun and engaging. Looking forward to seeing you all in June. So that could mean a couple of things. It's interesting to think about this with Nintendo because they had some pretty elaborate booth setups at E3. I mean, really, if you looked at any of the footage from previous E3s, Nintendo kind of goes above and beyond. Even at like PAX, they'll do all kinds of stuff. Like with Animal Crossing, there's like a whole thing set up, which is pretty cool. But I'm wondering if they're talking about engaging, like they're going to have a virtual booth set up that you go through an application with E3, maybe on your phone or on your computer, and you visit different parts that Nintendo has set up. Or maybe I'm reading too much into this because it is technically Nintendo here, but I like the idea of them having a virtual booth and maybe even linking it to their different games. Like, what if you go to this E3 booth that Nintendo has set up, and then, hey, you get a really cool shirt in Animal Crossing that's like Nintendo E3 2021. That might be wishful thinking, but it would actually be pretty cool to see, but I guess we'll find out in a couple of months as we work towards E3 this June. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with the Nintendo Switch firmware 12.0. We had talked about before, data miners were going through it. It was a full jump from 11 to 12, and people were kind of in disbelief that it was like this one little bug fix. But it does look like a lot of the stuff that was changed was more for the back end. Maybe prepare for some new piece of hardware, Switch revision or something coming up. We talked about the dock, could see a new dock even. So let's head over here on Twitter. We can see Oatmeal Dome says 12.0.0 has added audio support to the Bluetooth driver. However, I'm not sure if anything is actually using this new support support so far. No guarantees it will ever be used either. If we go down a little further from here, they say, I personally don't think Nintendo would add this for no reason, so hopefully this will be used somewhere, especially since Bluetooth audio is a highly requested feature on Switch. And technically not wrong about that. People have been asking for the ability to sync up their Bluetooth headphones, or like AirPods or just any nice headphones they may have, without having to go through a third party to get a dongle to then sync up there, which, I mean, that's been a whole market on its own, or these different adapters that you plug into the Switch or into the USB port on your dock so that you can sync up those headphones. So yes, I would like native Bluetooth support so we can do that. And I mean, this could even be for a new Pro Controller or Joy-Cons in the future that maybe has like a headphone jack through it. A lot of possibilities here. And yes, that could be a strategy from Nintendo, that being that the Switch Revision or Pro legitimately has marketing that's like, now it supports Bluetooth audio. And it's like, wow, thanks, Nintendo. My Vita did that in 2011, but good to know that the Pro system coming out in 2021, for example, has it too. Also, if this was possible this whole time, that they could have flipped the Switch and added Bluetooth audio, that'd be kind of frustrating, I think, for a lot of early adopters, because that's something that people have been mentioning since the Switch came out. And if it would have been that easy that they could have just added it in over the last 4 years, why wouldn't they have done it sooner? So yeah, I'm kind of looking at this thinking, wow, they might actually have this as like a Switch Revision only type of thing with Bluetooth audio. And the big thing here, because people are wondering, well, why is all this stuff showing up in firmware? There's a few possibilities. Yes, they might be putting out this firmware just to make sure it's stable and ready to go for whenever this new hardware, the Switch Revision, comes out, that's been reported on at length now by Bloomberg. They might just want to have the shipped firmware like stable, and they're using the most stable version when it comes out. It's also possible that developers who reportedly have dev kits now actually for this are running similar firmware to this, with these features being added in, whether it's the audio Bluetooth, or it is the dock that has its firmware upgraded so they can output, say, 4K. So that's kind of what I'm looking at there. It's like these firmware updates could also be going alongside any type of dev kit updates that are currently being pushed. But looking at everything we're seeing right now, and I'm sure they'll continue to go through this firmware and maybe find other things, we'll see there. But it is becoming more and more likely that we are working towards a Switch Revision, whether it's a Switch Pro, a new Nintendo Switch, a Super Switch, Switch Plus, whatever you want to call it, probably in the near future. Could be this holiday, could be towards the beginning of 2022, but a lot of changes are taking place under the hood here for the Switch firmware for nothing to be happening, so we'll see. Next up, let's talk about a PlayStation 5 game that has been delayed once again. That is Deathloop. If you remember, this game was apparently supposed to come out, I guess, like right alongside the PlayStation 5 when it launched in November, but they had to delay it till the first quarter of 2021, where we are now, and we were anticipating it coming out in May, but it looks like they're gonna have to delay it once again, as we can see here over on Twitter, where they say, we've made the decision to delay the launch of Deathloop to September 14th, 2021. We committed to quality and preserving our team's ambitions for Deathloop while ensuring the health and safety of everyone at Arcane. We'll be using this extra time to accomplish our goal, create a fun, stylish, and mind-bending player experience. We apologize for the extended wait, and thank you all for your passion and excitement. It is the fuel that powers our creativity and our hard work. We can't wait to show you more Deathloop soon. So we've talked about delays in the gaming space now. It's something that's a bit more common with everything that was going on with the pandemic and COVID, and really forcing remote work for a lot of these different studios that seems to be slowing down their overall development and progress that they've been making here. I'm sure a lot of milestones were being missed and all this, and yeah, it's another delay, but as we said before, the Cyberpunk effect has got to the point where people go, yeah, okay, it's fine. We don't want another Cyberpunk. Sure, take your time. That's fine. And it is good that Arcane is being given the time to do this. I mean, we just went through the whole thing where Microsoft bought Bethesda and ZeniMax. So good to see that they're not just like, you got to get out the door. We want to start doing our own thing with Arcane for Xbox Game Pass. They're saying, yeah, go ahead. Make sure the game is good so we can then move on to something else afterwards. We don't have to sit there and patch this game for the next 8 months or something if we put it out in May. Anyway, now this does kind of shake up Sony's overall release schedule a bit, because if you think about it, we had Returnal, then we would have a Deathloop, then we would have Ratchet and Clank, just 3 months back to back to back to back, and that would have been good. But now we have kind of this hole in May where we're going to go from Returnal, which I said before, a lot of people don't seem sold on that game. It's Housemarque, and I'm gonna be picking this one up because I do have faith that Housemarque will deliver something interesting and fun. But I see a lot of people already looking past this one. Some were looking past it to Deathloop, some were looking past it to Ratchet and Clank. But if you're not interested in Returnal, now it's basically like, okay, I guess we're gonna look forward to Ratchet and Clank in June. So Sony is, again, the first half of this year, the 7 months since the PS5 came out, it's been pretty quiet for Sony overall. So sure, they'll rely on third parties like Microsoft has, and they've had some releases, what Destruction All-Stars, we just talked about Returnal here, but for the most part, it's been a slow start to the generation for both companies overall, and I guess at least Sony does have some exclusives, something like Demon's Souls, right? That was a good one, Spider-Man Miles Morales, but it hasn't been a quick start. And having something like Deathloop being now moved to September isn't really helping things, but it could work to maybe crowd up the overall holiday lineup that Sony is preparing now. So there we go. I guess we'll look forward to September to get things kicked off and see what else Sony has lined up for us this holiday. Next up, let's talk about a game for the Switch that may have been accidentally leaked out on the PEGI ratings boards. And we can see this here. This was tweeted out by Nebelium, where they took a screenshot of it, which is good because the listing did change. I mean, we can see Borderlands 3 Director's Cut. This is a strange one, by the way, because we can see the description right there. DLC expansion for the first-person shooter Borderlands 3, featuring new missions and maps. And look at the release dates and platforms. That's, that was yesterday, the 8th of April. PC, PlayStation 4, Nintendo Switch, Xbox One, PS5, Xbox Series X and S. Why would the Switch be getting Borderlands 3 Director's Cut if it doesn't have Borderlands 3? Well, later on, it looks like they updated the listing and removed Nintendo Switch. So I guess this isn't rated for the Switch. Could this have been an accident and just maybe thrown in there as they were going through and clicking check boxes for which system has been rated completely and is ready to go? Yes, I think it is possible this was legitimately just an accident. And a lot of people were wondering right away, they're like, well, this game really struggles on the Xbox One and the base PlayStation 4. Like, those systems, probably not the best way to play Borderlands 3. So naturally, a lot of people were looking at the Switch and wondering, is it really going to be playable within reason on the Switch? And that does come up. We've seen some efforts made in certain games, like Ark as an example, where you're like, whew, that wasn't great. Like, some games don't always need to go to the Switch, and that's one of the reasons I feel like there's a lot of interest in the idea of a Switch revision, like a Switch Pro that could do 4K and is just more powerful, reduces the sacrifices around bringing a game, making it to the hybrid concept of the Switch. I did wonder, though, looking at this, is it possible that Borderlands 3 could be a streaming game? And I know people don't like to hear that, but I mean, that's the reality sometimes of these games. Hitman 3, that's streamed to the Switch. Control is streamed to the Switch. Maybe Borderlands 3 was as well. And I don't think anyway, because I looked and checked, didn't look like you needed any ratings if it is being streamed to the Switch. So maybe that's a possibility, but this is just the DLC. We need to at least have the base game rated for the Switch before we start talking about the DLC being rated. So as of now, I'm looking at this as an accident, but I'm not necessarily ruling out Borderlands 3 for the Switch in the future, whether it's for like the Switch Pro or streamed, or who knows, maybe they try to jam it on the base Switch. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about WWE 2K22. Now, we had 2K20 and that was a disaster. Now, I know a lot of people like to make fun of 2K18 because it was really bad on the Switch, but 2K20 on like the Xbox One and the PS4 were just buggy and glitchy and just all over the place. It was pretty funny at times. Like, you would see some of those, the GIFs and the videos and stuff posted on Twitter, and you would laugh, but then you'd also have to remember somebody paid $60 for that, and I mean, it got torn up in the news. It was pretty ugly. It even got to the point where I believe in 2020, like the first day of 2020, the game was unplayable because of a glitch that had like the calendar roll over and just mess everything up there again. Not the greatest look for the WWE 2K series. So they decided to take the year off for 2K21, and it looks like they're coming back for 2K 2022, and we're going to see it for the first time here, coming up pretty soon, actually at WrestleMania. We can see this over at VGC, where they say the news will be shared during WrestleMania 37, which is due to run this weekend, April 10th to the 11th. This apparently is going to be a special announcement related to the next WWE 2K title. Now, we know Visual Concepts is working on this completely. Yuke's is not a part of this anymore. They parted ways just before 2K20 came out. And I mean, Yuke still worked on it with them, but it sounded like there was some internal development issues between all of them. And the one thing I'm at least hopeful for with this reveal is they had talked about previously last year, around the time that they said they're going to take a bit of a break. They wanted to go back and look at some of the more successful games in the overall WWE history, like No Mercy or Here Comes the Pain, basically games that people and fans look back on as being some of the best games in just the overall wrestling genre. And I hope that means they're going to look back on and say, okay, what made the gameplay good? What made the presentation good? What made even like the storylines and all of the story mode good? The creator wrestler, all these different things. And maybe they come back with a higher quality product, but I get it if people are gonna be skeptical because we've seen the past couple of years and it hasn't been good. So I'm crossing my fingers to where we can get back to something like the old days with Here Comes the Pain or No Mercy, and they just kind of modernize it a bit and bring it up. But we'll see. Also keep in mind, Visual Concepts and Yuke's are technically on different sides now, with Yuke's developing the next AEW game and Visual Concepts developing the WWE game. So maybe a little bit of competition there. That could actually give us maybe some pretty good wrestling games. We'll see. Before we go to the comment of the day, we're taking the poll that I posted up yesterday, where I asked, will Nintendo have some sort of direct before E3 in June? 62% of you said no. 38% of you said yes. I do think they will have another direct of some kind, and it'll probably be an Indie World presentation. I don't think they're going to have like a direct mini or anything like that. We just saw Destroy All Humans just kind of dropped on Twitter. That could have been something that would have been saved for a partner showcase. I believe now the next big direct we will have at E3. I think everyone agrees on that one, but I'm not ruling out an Indie World showcase, and I think that's actually kind of likely maybe for this month or even in May as we lead up to E3. It's been mentioned, I think on the Spawncast, Nate even mentioned it, that a lot of times they'll have an Indie World around the time of PAX, which we'd be, I guess, at now, or having just finished. So I think there could be one pretty soon. And I mean, there's some games we could see there, Silk Song, Golf Story, and others. So that's kind of what I would look towards. Otherwise, though, I'm sure we'll be leading up to E3 with hopefully some big things to announce then. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day as you're seeing here. This is from the Chrome saying, Spawn, I'm not asking myself, why would Microsoft do that? I'm asking myself, why would Kojima do that? I mean, the answer is pretty simple. It's money. Like, this is a business overall. That's the biggest thing you gotta remember. I know a lot of people look at it as like games and like, oh, Kojima's like all pro Sony on this side. It has to be. Not necessarily. I mean, if Microsoft shows up with a check and the ability for him to be as creative as he wants to be, I mean, he'll probably go do that. And there's a lot of talks that Death Stranding wasn't exactly what Sony was expecting, and it didn't go as smooth as it maybe looked like from the outside at the time. And hey, some of the people that Kojima was working with isn't there anymore. Sean Layden's gone, Andrew House is gone, it's Jim Ryan, and Jim Ryan's a numbers guy. So it's hard to say on that one, but I was not shocked to hear that Microsoft, yeah, they might be in talks with Kojima to publish his next game. Think about it. Microsoft, I'm sure, would be more than happy to also publish it on PC for him, right? I mean, Microsoft, no problem putting that game on PC as well as on Xbox Game Pass. And if Kojima has all of his expenses covered for development and then he gets money on top of that, yeah, why not? I mean, that is something that Kojima is probably looking at, weighing the pros and cons, and probably coming up more pro than con on this one. And ladies and gentlemen, that's gonna do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button, really helps out. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today. But there's Bluetooth audio support for the Switch. Are you happy to hear that it's at least been added into firmware? And do you think Nintendo's gonna enable it for this current Switch, or is that a Switch Pro feature that they will be marketing? Also, what about Deathloop now being delayed for a second time into the second half of 2021? And what do you think about Borderlands 3 on the Switch? Do you think it was a red herring, or could we actually see Borderlands 3 being jammed onto the current Switch that we have now? Thanks, guys, for watching. Have a great weekend. I'll see you back here Monday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Time for Newswave.